Let's get to the issue. This particular Jewish community, when it comes to Brooklyn, when it comes to Midwood, when it comes to Borough Park, this is very different than the national scene. This is not a community that 70% of the line are diehard liberal Democrats and have been since they view FDR saved the Jews in World War II from the Nazis. This is a completely different organization, different community. This community represents conservative Republican values, and they always have. They are all registered Democrats, however, because a long time ago, time before my time, and somebody probably a better insider can explain this to you better than I can, they decided that New York was completely useless to be a Republican. The Republican Party in New York is pretty much very weak. It is only recently that they've had victories, and thanks to the bumbling of the Democrats, and usually this is how this works. Without a Mayor Dinkins, there would not be a Rudy Giuliani. Without a Jimmy Carter, there would not be a Ronald Reagan. So usually when the country is quote-unquote fooled, or when the community is fooled into voting Democrat and they screw up so badly, it is then that you see the influx, or the inflush, if that's even a real word, of incoming Republican conservative individuals. All right, so they are all registered Democrats because they don't see a strong Republican Party in New York, and they may be possibly right. It's only recently that we've had the Michael Grimm victories, the Bob Turner victories, Wendy Long is now running, the Marty Goldens, David Storobin's last victory. It's only recently that the Republican Party has seen a kind of revival of these hardworking, sometimes blue-collar work areas, and it doesn't really matter whether they're blue-collar workers. They're pretty much, they hold conservative and Republican values, but they're all registered Democrats. When you try to get a Republican on the ticket, you really only have to go through 2,000 names. It's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. You do have to find them, but there's very few of them. And when it comes to the Democrat Party, they're all over the place. I mean, even though they don't vote that way. Now, nationally, when it comes to president, they have never, ever, as a whole, as a community, as a group, they have never voted Democrat, ever. They never have, and they never will. And specifically with this president, they're not going to vote Obama in 2012. There's very, very, very few people who would, and it's probably the diehard anti-Zionists, either be they at Sotmer or be they at Bells, who really like the isolationist policies of perhaps a Ron Paul type, which even in that thinking, they shouldn't vote for Obama because he's sometimes an interventionist and he's sometimes not. And when it comes to Simcha Felder, the Jewish community has voted Democrat locally because they've been convinced that these people are from their community, they're one of their own, and they seek their best interests, and they're only in the Democrat Party because that's the party of power. This is New York. This New York State is never going to go Obama, and that's why a lot of them don't even register. When I try to get people to sign on for the Republican nomination to get signatures, they said, I vote, I'm not a registered voter. And I said, why? They said, it's no point, because anybody who I would vote for, they're not going to win. New York is not, the way the delegate system works, I don't understand it completely, but basically New York is not going Obama it's not going Romney in 2012, so they feel that their vote is useless and wasted because there are so many Democrats down in Manhattan that they just overtake the rest of the city, the rest of the state. So they don't even register. So the only time that they've ever voted Democrat is when they believe that this particular individual, even though he's in the Democrat Party, well, he may have some liberal-leaning ideas or leftist ideas. He's conservative or middle-of-the-road enough to where I can vote for him, and he's only in that party to kind of work the power structure in their best interest. Now, when it comes to Mr. Simcha Felder has made a career out of not serving the interests of the community. He's made a career out of being a good Democrat, out of being a good leftist. And being a good Democrat is actually the wrong word. He's made a career out of being a fan of big government politicians. You can be a big government politician and be a Republican. You can be John McCain and all about healthcare. What do you call it? Not necessarily Obamacare, but some kind of national healthcare, which was the problem in the last election. In 2008, you had three candidates who voted for many of the same things. Too many times in the debate, you would hear things like, I agree with my opponent. When it came to the borders, it was Bush, McCain, and Obama who all agreed on the same thing. When it came to Gitmo, John McCain and Obama agreed that this should be shut down. When it came to healthcare, John McCain and Barack Obama agreed that something should be done. When it came to the bailouts, John McCain, Barack Obama, and President Bush all agreed that the bailout should happen. So why would the electorate vote for, the same old when they were tired of the wars overseas? Wrongfully, in my opinion, but they were tired, and they figured, hey, why don't we get new blood? Why don't we get somebody who claims that he's above politics, he's going to work with people? Let's try something new. For the most part, I think they think that didn't work out. Now, in 2008, Simcha Felder, being the good Democrat that he was, and trying to gain favor with the Democrat Party, played a little too much footsie with the opposition and against the community's interests. In 2008, he came on, you can look it up on YouTube, and he basically, in the primary race, backed Barack Obama. Now, of course, you know, national politics don't really play into local politics usually, but it does if you're on the record. So if he's going to open his mouth about the issue, he should be able to be held on the record. You see signs all over the neighborhood saying, Simcha Felder, because experience matters. Well, yes, we'd like to address his experience. His experience definitely does matter. If we can take it apart, it does not serve this community's interests at all. So in 2008, he said he backed Barack Obama. Why? Because of something that the Bill Clinton administration, I believe at the time, they called the Barack Obama campaign something like, Bill Clinton said, well, Jesse Jackson won a certain amount of votes, and this was considered racist. Something along the lines of, well, this, you know, not every black candidate is running in the same race. Just because Jesse Jackson ran in one time doesn't mean that Barack Obama is running the same race. And he said he is so weasel-like in his backtracking that he didn't even say, oh, I am not voting. You can see in the YouTube video, I'm not supporting Barack Obama because of the racist statements made by the Clinton campaign. I am backing it because of, well, you know what they said. His backpedaling is, he can't even backpedal correctly. So he can't even, he equivocates so much. He is so limp-wristed. He's such a weak individual, such a weak candidate, that even when he's trying to make a stand, he has to sit down. He can't make a stand for the life of him, even if he's backtracking. So now we come to 2012, and we see him supporting Mitt Romney. But he's such an intellectual lightweight that he can't specifically say what's wrong with the Obama policy. He can't specifically point out to Obama's weakness when it comes to the state of Israel, the fact that the Obama campaign, had to equivocate whether they were going to say that Jerusalem was specifically the capital, as opposed to Mitt Romney, who forcefully came out and said that Jerusalem is the capital. Obama's refusing to meet with Netanyahu and going on The View, all the bad things that the Obama administration does. He basically said, I think Obama, I don't have the exact quote, but he said something like, I don't agree with the Obama administration, it appears to be a bad move, and I now support Mitt Romney, which is very strange, and it's odd. Why would a voter in New York have to go, let's see, I'm voting for Mitt Romney, they're all voting for Mitt Romney, I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney on the Republican ticket because of whatever reason, probably because Obama is really bad, not necessarily that they love Romney, and most of them, some of them do, some of them don't, but they definitely understand that they don't like the current president, and they don't like his policies, and so let me hop parties, let me vote for the Republican candidate, and now let me vote for a Democrat candidate who previously in 2008 came on record and said that he supported him. Now, Simcha Felder's defense was that, well, I was only backing them in the primary because I was playing the Brooklyn game, which is you are a member of the Democrat Party and you try to confuse the opposition by, playing with their primary system. Well, that's not really true because, for one thing, he didn't give that reason for why he was backing the candidate. He said the reason why he was backing the candidate was because of Bill Clinton's campaign, supposedly, although you can't even tell from the video, because I know what he said, which I don't know what you said, so please elaborate for once. Actually take a position on something. Grow a spine. It would be very helpful so that we can actually put you down on a position. So he said it was because due to racist statements. Now, if you actually look at the way that game goes as far as screwing with the Democrat primaries, all Republican voters at that time, now I'm going to mention a name which is highly controversial to some people, but the New Movement conservatives, Mr. Rush Limbaugh on 770 WABC, can be heard noon to 3 daily. At the time, believe it or not, Rush Limbaugh has never actually gotten involved in politics. I know this is hard to believe. He actually comments on politics. Like, for example, this time around, he didn't back anybody in public in the primary debates because he wanted to maintain credibility when the actual debates started rolling down the hill, and he didn't want to be, tied to attacking the Republican candidate. Now, usually he never jumped in, but due to Mark Levin, who's the host that comes on at 6 to 9 p.m. here in New York, he made the case that, no, this country needs to be saved, and we need to speak out, and we need to be activists. We can't just report and analyze the news. We need to start actively getting involved. And Limbaugh did that when Bush's immigration policy came down the pike, where it appeared that the political class, both left and right, both agreed that there need to be open borders, while the entire country itself was against it. It appears that the only time there's bipartisanship, be it in Washington, be it in Albany, be it wherever it is where the political class gather, they only appear to get together when it comes time to do in the voters. And he specifically got involved, and he made sure that there were phone calls made. But the other thing that he got involved is when John McCain, let's go back. So Simcha Felder claims that he's Simcha Felder is either a typical liberal, and if you'll pardon the phraseology of different parties and ideologies, where every couple of election cycles he has to lie about his position after he realizes that his positions don't actually mesh with the community, be it on taxes, be it on religious values, or he's a political chameleon who just shifts and changes with the times. Tide. You can use that as well. So in 2008, he claimed that he backed Barack Obama because he, again, was being the typical Brooklynite who is a conservative, supposedly, or Republican, or somebody who agrees with the community's values, which is more right than left. He was merely playing the game of trying to pick either the worst candidate to be the winner of the primary so that the Republican could better beat them. And that's his claim that they could beat John McCain. But this goes against the grain of what actual Republicans were doing. Because Rush Limbaugh was running at the time, one of his first times getting involved in political campaigns, he ran something called Operation Chaos. Rush Limbaugh was extremely upset that John McCain had somehow managed, or finagled, to use the correct word, to make the Republican primaries open primaries where liberals and Democrats could vote in those primaries, and that's how John McCain won that primary. He didn't appeal to the base, which is what you're supposed to do in a primary. In a primary, you're supposed to appeal to the base, and when you get to an election, politicians tend to appeal to the country. What John McCain did was he appealed to the country instead of the base, and he basically told the base, listen, I know you're going to vote. He took advantage of the base. He said, I know you're not going to vote for Obama. You're going to vote for me anyway. So I'm just going to say whatever I want and do whatever I want, and I owe you nothing, and I'm going to give you nothing. So what Rush Limbaugh did is he had something called Operation Chaos, and this is where Republicans were registering as Democrats to be part of the Democrat primary, and they were calling in his show saying, I just became a delegate, and they were delegating for Hillary Clinton, because all people who actually were, shall we call them rightists, or people who agree with this community, who were registered Democrats, were in the primaries voting for Hillary Clinton as of Operation Chaos to keep that primary ongoing, because Obama was supposed to be, it was evident that Obama was going to be the winner of that primary, but if they could keep Hillary Clinton in that race, they could bloody each other up in the primary, which would later come back to bite them and hurt them. For example, when Hillary Clinton, yes? So when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama disagreed on Pakistan, when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama disagreed on healthcare, and then he later made her the Secretary of State, this raised some obvious questions of credibility, which was perfect, which was exactly what it was supposed to do. So his notion that he was simply somebody who agreed with the community, and yet he was just merely playing the primary game trying to pick the weakest winner, is completely false, and it goes against every single grain of what everybody else who was a registered Democrat who did not believe with the Democrat Party line was doing. It goes completely opposite. It's an excuse. He actually backed Barack Obama because he thought he would win, and he likes to go with whoever he thinks the winner is, if we're going with the thought that he's a political chameleon and we'll just go with the winner is. And in short, he hasn't specifically said what exactly he disliked about Obama's policies that made him switch over to Romney. He's too much of an intellectual lightweight to actually attack Obama's positions when it comes to Israel, be it that, the Barack Obama campaign refused to say that Jerusalem was the capital, be it that he refused to meet with Netanyahu and he went on The View instead, or that the fact that Romney actually said unequivocally that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. So we have his backing of Obama in 2008, and now his backing of Mitt Romney in 2012. We then have him on taxes. He's repeatedly voted for budgets that increase sales tax, property tax, congestion pricing, hotel tax, and cigarette taxes. Now, you can be a smoker or not a smoker. This is just the fact of his record that he's voted for budgets that increase taxes, as well as voting for budgets that cut religious funding from schools, which is extremely important to this community. Are you asking me questions, or is that just noise in the background? I'm assuming that's just noise in the background. So now he has the Democrats, when it comes to the election cycle, they realize, oh my goodness, I'm in a party that doesn't agree with the community. So what do? He literally invented a brand new party called Tax Cuts Now, so that he, as a Democrat, can jump onto what has always been a Republican conservative idea, which is that tax cuts increase growth. When people have more money in their own pocket to use for investment, for payroll, for manufacturing, for production, this increases growth. And that the solution to poverty isn't necessarily different government programs to provide specific manufacturing goods for individuals, be it housing, be it healthcare, be it whatever it is. The actual solution to American poverty is wealth. It's personal growth and wealth, and you can only do that by cutting taxes so that people have more money to invest. But Tax Cuts Now, what is it? Tax Cuts Now basically takes part of the conservative ideology, Republican ideology, which believes that tax cuts increase growth, and it says we only want tax cuts, but only for the middle class. So basically, they've managed to take a conservative idea which believes in individualism and the growth of private entrepreneurs, and managed to use that and abuse it by throwing in their class warfare, by pointing to their neighbor down the street, their fellow American, and saying that, do you see that wealthy guy over there? He doesn't need a tax cut. Even though he's probably producing more, he probably manufactures more, he hires more people, we're only going to give you a tax cut in a cheap attempt to buy their vote. Now, it shouldn't work and it won't work. The other problem with this is that there is no real definition of this quote-unquote middle class. What is a middle class? If somebody who makes $90,000 a year as a plumber and his wife is a retired teacher and he goes to shul on a daily basis and he makes $90,000, is he the same as perhaps somebody who may be for gay marriage, a lawyer who lives in Manhattan by himself, never goes to shul and makes $90,000? This whole idea of a class system is foreign to the American people, and it's foreign to the Jewish community. We don't look at our neighbors and go, goodness, that guy has more money than us. I'm envious of him. Let's tax him. And besides, if you tax the quote-unquote wealthy at
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that comparison. Would you mind explaining it again a little more?
Sure. The left has a problem when they try to divide Americans into different class systems. The class system is foreign to the American populace in this community. We don't look at our neighbor and see that he is wealthier than us and are envious of him, and instead of emulating his past activities, say, we would like to tax him more to keep growing this endless leviathan of government, this endless spending, but let's take ourselves a tax cut. This is not how we see things. There is no such thing, really, as the quote-unquote middle class. Somebody who makes $90,000 a year as a plumber, whose wife is a retired teacher and has 4 kids and goes to shul and prays 3 times every day, is not the same as somebody who lives in Manhattan, who is single, who is for gay marriage, and makes $90,000 a year and is an atheist. These are not the same people. We are individuals. Americans aren't into class systems. This isn't India. We're not born into a class system. Anybody can be anything that they want. You can get an education and you can do whatever you want in this country. It is only a leftist ideal that people are in different classes. We have upward mobility in this country, and of course, due to the policies of the current administration, they're being suffered and torn down. So his entire idea of tax cuts now, this notion, is a mishmash of conservative ideology thrown in with leftist rhetoric and class warfare, something that doesn't belong in this community, nor is it actually financially sound. When you have New York City is paying teachers in their rubber rooms, basically when teachers get accused of sexual molestation, because it is so hard due to the teachers union to fire teachers, they put them in a room where they stay from 9 to 5, sit in a room and get paid. You can't tell me that this kind of government spending can't get cut. You can't tell me that we must still increase taxes on somebody to keep this endless leviathan of government spending and this increasing power of the state alive. You have to cut spending, and you have to cut taxes on all levels and on all fronts. Well, let me see. I lost my train of thought. So let me talk about. Let me give you Simcha Felder's record. So he's now trying, due to that it's election season, he's now trying to be the spokesperson for tax cuts when his record doesn't speak to that. His record, every budget that he's voted for, called for tax increases, and now he's all about tax cuts now, to the point of where he even invented his own party in order to just run on this false notion that he's all about tax cuts. Now you have his unequivocating, I don't know what the proper word to use for this, his support, non-support of Christine Quinn. Christine Quinn is somebody who believes in same-gender marriage. Now, because he was a fellow Democrat and a good Democrat, he said, I support Christine Quinn, but due to religious reasons, I can't really support her. And by the way, when it comes to tax cuts, David Storobin has sponsored legislation to lower taxes. He sponsored legislation for school vouchers. He's never had a conflict. He always speaks his mind. He always stands on his issues. Why this community would vote for a Democrat who's supposed to vote Republican as opposed to voting for a Republican who's going to vote Republican is beyond me. When it comes to the Christine Quinn vote, so he said he supported her because she was part of his party and he agreed with her agenda except for the gay marriage issue. So when the vote came down, he hid in the bathroom. This man is spineless. At least Barack Obama had the decency when he was in the Chicago, Illinois Senate to vote present over 100 times. Simcha Felder couldn't even do that. He had to run to the bathroom. You've never seen Obama run to the bathroom. At least he had the decency to vote present. Simcha Felder couldn't even do that. And then you have his support for the Mike Bloomberg machine. Nobody in this community, Mike Bloomberg threw millions of dollars for his 3rd term. He threw in, Simcha Felder was directly responsible for Mike Bloomberg's 3rd term. Now, whatever Mike Bloomberg does with his policies, be it the ridiculous soda taxes, be it his war on circumcision, that's besides the point. The point is that nobody in this community, most of them did not vote for Mike Bloomberg. Mike Bloomberg won by 5% vote. Now, I'm not saying the opposition to Mike Bloomberg was any better, but it's just goes to show that he didn't understand the community. And he never pressured Mike Bloomberg. He never said, listen, if you're going to go run for a third term, you have to give this and this and this to the community. And it was clearly pointed out of who was the kingmaker in that little relationship. It's Mike Bloomberg. So when Mike Bloomberg comes out against circumcision, the supposed Orthodox candidate, who we're all supposed to vote for because he has a nice smile and because he dominates next to me, took him 2 weeks to come out and speak against circumcision, and only when he was cornered on the Dov Hikind show did he actually come out and speak against Michael Bloomberg's awful statements on circumcision. It took David Storobin 24 hours. So this supposed, and David Storobin, who is Jewish and who has been classified as Orthodox by some people, comes out in 24 hours. Who is correctly voting for the interests of this community? It doesn't matter that you're just Jewish and religious. It matters how you vote. It matters your experience. Now, if you looked at the last election, if you looked at Werpin versus Turner, Werpin was an Orthodox Jew, and Bob Turner obviously was not Jewish. I think Bob Turner is Italian. Is he Italian or is he Catholic? Or is he Irish Catholic? I'm not even sure. Whatever it is, Bob Turner is not an Orthodox Jew. But because Werpin supported gay marriage, Werpin was destroyed by Bob Turner. So this notion that simply because you have your fellow Yid next to you that you're supposed to vote for him, you're supposed to give him a job, let him have a job. Let him be a dog catcher. Let him do whatever he does. He should be in charge of the office of what's the word? Equivation? I can't really think of the word. If somebody who can't make up his mind, what's the word? Equivization? When you equivocate. The office of equivocation. That's what his office should be. And he should decide how and exactly when he wants to equivocate on what issue. And then he should change his mind on the issue and equivocate about that. Then he should equivocate on the office of equivocation and equivocate on whether equivocating is actually a good idea and actually have a policy issue and a stance to actually stand on. And in short, David Storobin's record speaks for itself. While he was in office, he promised that he would lower taxes. He sponsored legislation to lower taxes. He sponsored bills for school vouchers. It's extremely difficult in New York City to go up against the teachers union who own this city, who own this town, to actually say, no, you know what? Citizens have a right to send their kids to private schools. It's been proven that kids who go to private schools do better. And if you open up the market, if you let the problem right now is that private schools are very, very expensive because there's not a lot of them. So most parents, even if they're not Jewish, send their kids to public schools because they can't afford private schools. If it became more economically feasible to send your own children to private schools, there would be more private schools. And any studies that you show, if you look at the public schools versus the private schools do way better than the public schools because they can fire teachers. The charter schools do way better. They all do way better. And if the prices for these private schools come down, you will have more of them. So this notion that it's only for the wealthy is nonsense because there needs to be more competition, and the prices can only come down if more people can afford them. And the only way they're going to be able to afford them right now is if they had vouchers. Simcha Felder is on record for saying that anybody who thinks that they can get school vouchers now has got to be kidding themselves. That's not a direct quote. That's a paraphrase. You can look that up. What Simcha Felder has said about school vouchers in the past. Now, of course, because it's the election cycle, it's the election season again, he's going to try to claim the mantle of school vouchers. He's going to, on a campaign trail, promise school vouchers when he never did it while he was in office. And he has a political career of playing footsie with the opposition, with people who do not agree with this community. His record speaks for itself. And if he wins, if an Obama Democrat wins in 2012 in the Borough Park, Brooklyn, Flatbush area, it will probably suffer an eternity of cronyism and Democrat rule for a long, long time. If they can't vote for a Republican who votes Republican, who's a conservative Republican, and by the way, this notion that Simcha Felder is a conservative simply because he hijacked the conservative line. He hijacked the conservative line. The conservative line here in New York has a long history of conservatism. They ran William F. Buckley in 1964, I believe it was. Maybe it wasn't 64. They ran William F. Buckley against the Republican candidate because the Republican candidate wasn't conservative enough, and the Republican candidate did not back Barry Goldwater. This is the party that fought against Dewey with the Republican idea, and Jacob Javits and Rockefeller. This is the Republican Party that said, we will no longer be the party of big government and Me Too. We will no longer be the party of, you know what, we like big government, but we want to be in control of big government. That stimulus plan over there, that's a bad stimulus plan. We have a much better stimulus plan for you. That's why the conservative movement was born. And the fact that Simcha Felder thinks that he can get a bunch of brand new voters and hijack the conservative line, and somehow we're all supposed to think that the William F. Buckley line is somehow now Simcha Felder's, when his voting record doesn't speak to it, is unbelievable. And it's not believable, and nobody buys it. Nobody buys that Simcha Felder is a conservative. He simply hijacked the conservative line. He hijacked William F. Buckley's line. And, the Conservative Party ran George J. Marlin against Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani was not conservative enough for the Conservative Party. And this long history of the Conservative Party is actually, it's a black eye to the Conservative Party that Simcha Felder managed to get a bunch of new registered voters to just vote for him so he could take that line. He's not a conservative, and as a movement conservative, I'm extremely upset that he has that line, and I will do everything in my power, and I hope that the voters see it my way, to do everything to make sure that Simcha Felder and his ilk never come anywhere near the seats of power. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. He's just a very bad politician. What we're actually running here, there's not a campaign of David Storobin versus Simcha Felder. It's Simcha Felder versus this community, and that's what's going on here. He either wants to get the community's vote because he thinks that they're just too stupid to realize that he has a record, or he's a dedicated, he's a political chameleon who will shift and change with the tides and go wherever the wind blows. Either way, he thinks that the Borough Park voters are too dumb. He is running against them. He doesn't hold their values at his heart, and he thinks that they're too stupid to realize what his record is. It's Simcha Felder versus this community, and that's the short end of it. And that's the end of Let's Talk Tachlis with Moshe Friedman. Thank you.
Let me ask you a few follow-up questions.
Go ahead, sir.
Very helpful. I think it's interesting that Simcha Felder doesn't have a website. Do you think there's anything interesting about that?
Absolutely, because Simcha Felder actually attacked the blogs when he was being viciously attacked on the internet for his actual record, because most of the stuff you can actually Google and you can find his record. He's actually on the Dov Hiken show, I believe. He was saying things like, they're saying very mean things about me. This is very odd from a politician. Simcha Felder released, I'm not sure if you've seen it, and I can link you to it. Simcha Felder released a Yiddish-only publication right before the holidays because he thought that nobody else was going to read it. This is very much Arafat-like in his sense, where Arafat would say one thing to the UN, peace, 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 and say another thing to the PLO, where he was all about jihad. He thinks that he can talk to his people in one way and talk to the public in another. And in this Yiddish ad, he basically said that David Storobin was the son without a name. In Yiddish, the actual words are Sin Mitun Anumen. You did see that. So, and he doesn't want to be challenged on the internet. He doesn't want to be challenged by bloggers. He doesn't like the blogosphere. He prefers, if we were back in the old days of the newspapers, where you had 5 editorialists who basically not only reported the news, but who made the news. And if they were either bought off or because they were ideologically in line with a particular individual, they could be sold and bought. It's not like that anymore. These power brokers in Brooklyn are not going to be able to get away with trying to cover up this leftist's record. It's just not going to work. The fact that he doesn't have a website speaks further to the fact that he doesn't trust the internet. He doesn't trust the New Age. He doesn't like Yeshiva World News. He doesn't like What's His Nice. He doesn't like the Gestetner updates. He doesn't like Jacob Kornblum's blog sites. He fears it. He doesn't like it because to him, information isn't power. To him, information and truth is a detriment to his campaign. The thing that will hurt his campaign is the truth about his record, and that's why he doesn't have a website, and that's why he refuses to be website savvy, and that's why he only opened up his office down in Borough Park, 20 days before the election. How long has David Strobin's office been open on Ocean Avenue? You've been down there. How long has that office been open? How long have they been running a campaign? Why would he try 20 days before an election try to stampede and run through the place and try to quickly push out his voter base only with 20 days before an election? He's refused to debate on New York One. He doesn't want to get the truth out there, and that's why he doesn't have a website. It's because he doesn't want to be challenged. He doesn't want to face emails. He doesn't want to put out public statements. He doesn't want to write articles in newspapers. One, because he's an intellectual lightweight, and 2, because he fears exposure.
Nick, how did you hear that he refused to debate on New York One?
That is from the David Strobin campaign when they released a document in response to his attack about the Zin without a Numen, the son without a name. They said, we've repeatedly tried to call the Simcha Felder campaign. We said we wanted to have a nice an above-board campaign. We've done this twice with him. We've tried to get a debate on New York One, and he's refused multiple times.
The reason I asked is because the professor is the one that invited them. He was there once. So I thought that was interesting. He told us that
the reason, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You said the reason.
My professor is a television host on New York One, and he told us that he'd invited them onto his show. But that Felder declined. So I was just interested to hear how you heard about it.
The David Strobin would like a debate with New York One against Simcha Felder, and I can say that on record and unequivocally. We want it as soon as possible.
Well, but you're not speaking on behalf of the two individuals, correct?
In this case, I am.
Okay.
David Storobin campaign that we absolutely want a New York 1 debate, and we want it as soon as possible.
I'll let him know. I think he's.
And by the way, we will destroy Simcha Felder in a debate. There is no way that he stands up to us in a debate. David Storobin is no intellectual lightweight. David Storobin believes in what he says. He's based in fundamental conservative principles and values, and he has been for his entire life and his entire career.
So another question: Do you think that? Have you seen Simcha Felder campaigning proactively in the community?
Have I seen him campaigning?
Are you aware of it?
That he's campaigning where?
Proactively in the district.
I haven't seen him campaign proactively in the district, but his office just had an opening yesterday. I was actually out there screaming that people should vote Republican. That's not from the video I showed you. This was actually yesterday in the daytime. He actually came out and shook my hand, and I refused to let the cameraman have 1 second of me smiling with him, so I kept screaming at the 13th Avenue crowd about how the Democrat Party does not represent this district. I shook Obi Mori's hand. I ran into Dov Hiken. I shook his hand. So yes, at his opening yesterday, he was giving out frisbees to children, and they were tying Simcha Felder balloons to carriages that walk by. Now, if he thinks that 9-year-olds vote and he can give them frisbees and somehow that they're going to come out to the voting polls on November 6th, I hate to break this to him that they're sadly mistaken. I mean, this isn't the Kennedy-Nixon administration where people in graveyards vote. Children are not going to be able to vote. They're not on the voting register. So this isn't Chicago and the Nixon-Kennedy race. You're not going to have people voting from the graveyard. So neither are children, and neither any balloons or any kind of frisbees that he wants to hand out may be very nice, and some kind of politico down in his campaign thinks that that's a great idea. But believe it or not, in political races, you actually have to stand on the issues and not just hand out frisbees to children. I actually have one of the frisbees in the office, and I plan on throwing it around when we win. Just throwing it around back and forth between me and David on camera.
Yeah. So as someone who lives in the district, though, I'm wondering. I was aware of his campaign office opening. Where would a voter in the district get information about Simcha Felder?
Where would you go to get information about Simcha Felder? You mean online?
Yeah. Anywhere. How do they know, what the positions are?
You would go to the David Storobin campaign website.
To the David Storobin Simcha Felder's position?
Absolutely. We can unequivocally actually state what his positions are, because he won't do it. You can go to the usual places online, because that's the only places you're going to find him. You're not going to find a home base of here's Simcha Felder, here's his positions. If you want, you could actually look up his voting record via New York City. What was he on, the community council, whatever board he was on. You could look up his record that way, and you could fact check that way whether he actually voted for tax, whether there was any budget that had tax increases that he voted for, whether there was any budget that cut school funding that he voted for, and it's all there.
Thank you. I certainly know where to find information on it, but I'm wondering where people who live in the community get information about both of their candidates. I mean, to me, as someone who's not from the community, it seems, if I were my representative, I would probably go online, maybe, but I'm not quite sure where the information is coming from about Simcha Felder, because it hasn't been. So I was just wondering where,
So basically what you're telling me is, as a reporter, you have a hard time trying to find out what Simcha Felder's positions actually are?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I guess
it's a poorly phrased question. What I'm trying to say is, what information sources are most influential and most influential to voters in the community?
That's a good question. I would assume it would have to be just flyers, word of mouth, and you gotta remember there is a section of this population that isn't necessarily internet savvy, and that's the people he's trying to fleece. But I'm sure you know Yeshiva World News, Voz is Nice, and that's really where a lot of people get their news from. You can read all the local papers, but the local papers will only cover something big. Like if a court case came down saying such and such was thrown off a ballot, that's usually when the papers would pick it up. But the actual news where they get their news information from, it's either all those internet sites, the ones that he so demeans and dislikes. It's the Yeshiva World News, it's Voz's Nayas, and it's Gestetner Updates and Jacob Kornblum's blog site. This is where people get their news from these days. You're not going to read about this kind of local election in the Yated or in the Mishpacha. You may read an ad, but that's about as far as it will go.
So that could potentially be a reason why he doesn't have a website, because is that correct? These papers are the most influential sources in terms of how voters, in your opinion, I'm just asking.
Yeah. Well, that's why he doesn't have a website. It's because the semi-sophisticated, and it's growing and it's getting better, people who hold politicians to the record online would destroy him. But if you actually go to 53rd and 13th, there is one of those pamphlets that he keeps handing out to specific communities, these little print-ups, be they in Yiddish or in English, and they're actually posted on his wall. And that a lot of it is done via, pamphlets and readouts that the campaigns themselves put out there. But it would be great if there were a fact-check website. Like if you, at Columbia School of Journalism, actually looked up the record and checked to see if anything that I told you is either factually incorrect or if I've been misinformed. And if you look up the record to see if he's actually ever voted for budgets that included tax increases, if he's ever voted for a budget that included cutting the funding to religious schools. If you look up the fact about his Christine Quinn vote, you've obviously seen the Obama video. I mean, you can actually...
I've seen most of that. I wasn't 100% sure about all of the tax raises you mentioned, but, the hotel tax, he did not vote for the property tax as far as what I saw, but I don't think you actually mentioned property tax.
Okay. I may have, and I could be wrong. So take me on the other three taxes. Okay.
Yeah, no. I've definitely seen information about his record, but I was more interested in terms of the most influential sources of information for people that live in the community.
I couldn't give you a good answer. I could get back to you on it, though. I couldn't give you a good answer offhand.
No, I think you mentioned a bunch of.
Were you not aware of those sites?
No, I wasn't. But I'm aware from somebody. I'm aware of like Yeshiva World and the Jewish Press. A bunch of these sites. But
the other side is Voz's Nayas.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that one too.
And Gestetner Updates. He's a blogger.
I know Gestetner.
Okay, and Jacob Kornblum.
Okay. Yeah, he used to have a site there since then, right?
He used to have that site. That site is currently down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, so I was familiar with that, but, it wasn't clear to me.
I understand your question. Your question is basically where does the community go to get their information? And off the top of my head, I really couldn't tell you. Because you got to remember this: I'm a political outsider as well. I mean, this is my second local campaign. There are guys who are very, very smart and they know the inner campaigns. I may forward you one name, but he only posts anonymously online because again he wants to live a life. But he knows the intricacies of the local scene way more than I do, and I could probably give you his name at some later date. Actually,
you've been really, really helpful. And in summary, you don't think that it seems to me you don't think that Felder, is it fair to say that you think he's a flip-flop?
I don't like to use flip-flop because it's been abused since the Kerry campaign, but I'm torn between either thinking that, I will use my words, that he's either a political chameleon who changes with the changing tides, or that he's the typical liberal leftist who lies about his position every time it comes up for election cycle.
Okay.
So I'm not sure which one it is.